Good Tuesday morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here again on MorningLine and on News Channel 5+. My name is Chris Conte, filling in for Nick Barris this morning. And we have Dr. Thomas Schwartz with us, who joins us pretty regularly here, talking about politics, all things politics for the entire hour here this morning. We're going to take some calls here, but let's just circle back to where we are today. Right now with the shutdown and the fight over this wall. The president was in New Orleans yesterday, talking about some of this. Went down to the border the end of last week. Where do you make of where things stand this morning here on day 25 of
Well, it would be nice if there was some announcement of any negotiating meetings or anything. Perhaps things are going on behind the scenes. There may be efforts by some of the senators or representatives to meet in Washington, but certainly nothing is coming publicly, and it does seem like both sides have decided that they can endure this for the time being and are going to go ahead with it. Yeah,
and the other thing that strikes me too, when we had the primetime address last week by both the president and Democrats, really nothing came out of that.
Nothing. Supposedly a poll showed that only 2% were at least influenced by it. It's remarkably, nothing has really moved. And I mean, you've got both sides really quite firmly entrenched.
So now a week after both of those primetime addresses, it seems to me that perhaps instead of them being any kind of newsworthy event where they were announcing any kind of progress or change or negotiation, it seems to me that it was almost just both sides very publicly saying, we're just going to dig in our heels.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of political theater here. Even the president's fast food event with the Clemson athletes yesterday was sort of designed for media attention to do this. And I think in that sense, what we're going to see is going to be a continuing effort to sort of try to spin this.
Yeah. 615-737-plus, 615-737-plus if you want to call in and talk with us here. We have Richard, who's been holding for a while. Richard, thanks for hanging on. We appreciate it. Where are you calling from? Richard? He was there during the break. Richard, can you hear me? Okay. Let's try Tom. Tom on line 5. Tom, can you hear me? Hey, Tom?
Yes.
Hey, thanks for holding on. We appreciate it. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Sparta, Tennessee.
From Sparta, Tennessee. You impacted by this shutdown at all, by chance?
Well, not yet, but I'm just waiting.
In what way? Why do you say that?
Well, I think Donald Putin is part of the Communist Party, and I think he's going to hurt the American people more than he realizes by shutting this down. That's like our farmers. That's like all of our people out there that's trying to be rich and powerful and wanting all this money. If he wants this wall built, why don't he build it himself, since he's such a billionaire and he's wanting this, and keep the American? I'm a Native American, and I don't like the idea of him trying to treat people. I mean, everybody's an immigrant to me, but you know, I mean, he's hurting the people, and people don't realize it yet. He's going to have to realize he works for the people. We don't work for him. And, you know, he's going to end up hurting a lot of people. Like I say, the farmers, the people are going to start having problems getting their food. And I really feel sorry for the people that don't get paid for their work. I mean, he's going to hurt them. And that's his people. I'm sure the people that's out there, sir, is really hurting. If he keeps this up in the next 2 weeks or whatever, a month, he's going to hurt the whole country.
Yeah. Tom, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it. We talked about this a little bit before, but really, as this drags on, more and more people are very severely impacted by this in their day-to-day life and all their family lives. Especially people that maybe have kids or mortgages or college payments. I mean, we've been hearing all kinds of very heart-wrenching stories. I mean, folks who are just really trying to hang on, but there's no end in sight.
The sad thing is that all these stories will be out there, and it does not seem like anyone has a sense of either emergency or desire to solve it. But I think we are in this is one of the consequences of the type of political polarization. We haven't had as severe partly because we haven't had any major foreign policy crises. We haven't had, the economy is doing very well for the most part, so we haven't had a real impact from the polarization, and so this is perhaps one of the first times.
And the last time we had a shutdown this long was back in the 90s.
Yes, a long time ago.
When President Clinton was in power and Newt Gingrich had just kind of come in control of the Congress. And, you know, Newt Gingrich had this whole kind of new brand of Republican politics and kind of this firebrand of what he was trying to accomplish. And even he ended up having to blink in that situation, right?
He did.
He
did. The publicity, partly because of the idea that he was being sort of very stubborn about it, and Clinton handled it masterfully, and Gingrich did blink. Now, Gingrich claims that one result of this, though, was to get a series of laws that did somewhat compromise a lot of democratic objectives that certainly got through, some of the Crime Act, some of these other things that he got passed during that time in a balanced budget. But it certainly politically it damaged Gingrich, who had higher political ambitions at that time, and that certainly was something that stopped him.
And just things have changed since the 90s.
Yes. Yep.
It seems harder that anyone up there can find any kind of common ground.
Well, yes, and I think one interesting difference.
And do you think that's because of the politicians that are up there right now, or is that it's just an echoing of their constituents back home?
I would tend toward the latter.
Yeah.
I think yes, we tend to blame politicians often, but oftentimes what they're reflecting is, of course, polarized attitudes at home, and certainly the extremes of the political basis.
As you can imagine, a lot of people wanting to get in on this conversation. Okay. We will continue to take some calls here. Richard over on line 1's been hanging on for a while. Richard, can you hear me? Maybe and mute your TV for me. Can you hear me, Richard? It's all right. Richard, I'm going to put you back on hold here for a second. We're going to, who do we have here? This is Wayne, you here?
No, it's Richard.
Oh, Richard, okay. I don't know what's been happening. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay, where are you calling from, Richard?
Ashland City.
Ashland City, been there a few times. It's pretty this time of year.
Yes, sir. Love it down here.
How's the river levels right now?
Oh, it's all right. It's fine.
It's been raining a lot.
Yeah, that.
Richard, what are your thoughts here on this shutdown? And let me ask you first, are you impacted directly by any chance?
No, I'm not.
Okay, what are your thoughts on what's been going on?
Well, Doug Trump, he wants the war. Let the Mexican pay for it, like he promised from the beginning. Why is he wanting $5.7 billion from the people that elected him?
Let me ask you, Richard, if you don't mind my asking, did you vote for President Trump?
Hell no.
Just curious. I was just curious if maybe I'm trying to find someone whose maybe opinion has been swayed by this whole thing. Richard, do you think that this ends anytime soon?
No. I hope. And I tell you what. Hope the Democrats stick for what they do.
Family show. Again, you know, we had Cindy, who was incredibly passionate earlier. Seemed to be a Republican. There's Richard on the other side of things, and neither one of them, both of them are saying, don't compromise.
Yes.
And so here we come back around to, you know, that these politicians up in Washington are just, a lot of them are just doing what their bases want.
They reflect the political tendencies of the more extreme elements of their base. I do think the unfortunate thing is partly out of redistricting, partly out of some of the way things have been drawn, that we've tended to accentuate this, and that there is still a large number of Americans who would identify themselves as something of middle of the road and not really invested in this. But those people seem to have been really lost in all of this.
Yeah. We still have a number of people that we're going to try to get to here. I think Jim is over on line 6. Jim, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. Where are you calling from?
Calling from Nashville.
From Nashville. Let me ask you first, any chance, have you been impacted by the shutdown directly?
No.
What are your thoughts on what's been going on the last couple of weeks?
The thing that gets me is it seems like the message that we're sending out to people around the world is, if you feel depressed and you feel oppressed, come to the United States. We'll welcome you and take care of you. The problem I see with that is, this is a great country.
And I think it's the best country in the world. And I can't blame people for wanting to come. But we have 300 million people, which is 5% of the world, of the Earth's people. There's 6 billion people on Earth. We have 5%. If just 5% of the ones that are not here decide that that's a good deal to come to the United States, and we're just going to pour across the border because they're not going to stop us. All of a sudden, we got 600 million people here, and our cities will be double to triple in the size in a short period of time. What a consequence this is. We have got to stop the massive ability to just walk into this country. And if we don't, we're going to destroy the country economically and otherwise. And I'd like to, do you honestly believe that people in the Middle East and South America and the East and the Far East that are under all kind of communist regimes and are being abused and that would not like to cross this border and come in this country? If they can find a way to get here, they'll come. And so my opinion is we need to do everything we can to stop massive people from coming in this country that we cannot control.
Jim,
that's my comment.
Jim, if you don't mind my asking, what are your origins, your family origins?
My family origins are Irish and Scottish.
So your family had to come over here at some point, right?
Mine came over here legally.
And do you think that is? Do you think that we should shut down all avenues for folks to come over here?
Absolutely not. We should have legal immigration. We should have control of who comes and how many. What I'm saying is when you have no control of how many or who they are, you're just asking to destroy the country.
Jim, thank you for calling in. We appreciate it. You know, and that is a sentiment that is echoed by a lot of people.
Absolutely. I think this does get at what is a central question for America's future, which is why I think historians will look at it. What type of immigration do you want? What would you allow? I mean, this country is an immigration-friendly country. What Trump supporters and others would say is legal immigration is all right, although if you look at the numbers, they've also restricted legal immigration. The population figures show that we need immigration to maintain our economy, to maintain its growth. So I do think there's a lot of issues here. The caller wasn't incorrect to say that lots of people would want to come here. And that is one of the strengths of this country, and so we want to continue it, but this is the type of thing that's making it very hard to have a rational debate.
Right. Cheryl over on line 7 has been hanging on for a little while. Cheryl, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good morning. Thanks for calling. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from White County. From
White County. Okay. Sparta, where are you?
Yeah, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Been there a few times. Let me ask, any chance you've been directly impacted by the shutdown?
I will be probably in about a month.
And in what way? Why do you say that?
Oh, I'm disabled.
Disabled, okay. And
okay.
So are you on disability, or where do you?
That's it. I'm on disability.
Okay. And so what's your biggest fear right now with the shutdown?
My biggest fear right now with the shutdown?
Yeah.
Well, it's I could lose my check.
Yeah. And what would that mean if you didn't get your disability check?
What would that mean? I would have no means of living. I am below the poverty level as to what I get on my disability. Okay? Now, I want to make a comment towards this law, or whatever they want to call it. It's not going to stop them. It really isn't. And, I mean, I don't think that we in the United States should be punished for this. And that's what I feel like is happening. I used to be a truck driver, coast to coast. I hauled food. We're going to have a food issue here, because I'm going to tell you something. I've been all over this country, and they have the Mexicans that get work visas to come here, and they're out there and they pick our food, okay? The white people, the black people are not going to go out there and do that. It's already been proven. And if they're not here to pick our food, it's going to impact us so bad. And then the oh, I can't remember what it's called, that the things on importing and
The tariffs?
exporting. Yes, the
Yeah.
tariffs. You know, that's going to hurt our food problem. And I think the whole thing is awful. If they want to build this wall, I think that the president needs to compromise and come to an agreement, at least halfway.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that is the only way this country is going to be a whole country, is if they all work together, meet each other halfway, and to me, that sounds fair.
Yeah. Cheryl, thank you for calling. We appreciate it. And she brings up an interesting point in terms of immigration, in that, you know, even though, you know, I think a lot of the president's base wants to just basically shut down the border to begin, you know, altogether, and keep anyone from coming in. There are a lot of jobs in this country that would not get done if we did not have immigrants, specifically immigrants coming in from South America.
Well, that is the unfortunate truth, and the sense that, you know, you could imagine a situation in which this was done more legally and more properly.
Right.
But that is absolutely correct. I mean, the economy, the United States economy, does in some ways rely very heavily on cheap labor. Now, some of that, you know, you could make the case that part of this should be also the effort to make sure that people who come across are actually paid well too. This would be higher prices, but that could be part of the story as well. But yes, of course, we're dealing with a situation in which a full shutdown could have impacts well beyond this.
And there's been a lot of talk too about, you know, if the president declares some kind of national emergency, can he then get the funding for the wall that way? Do you? Why do you think he hasn't done that yet? If his end game is truly to get this physical wall built, why not just do that and go about it in that avenue?
Well, because I think actually this is one of the things that interests me. If his end game is truly to build the wall, he might be able. If it is truly to build the wall, then maybe his position makes some sense. Because if he does declare an emergency, I think the most immediate thing that's going to happen is it's going to be legally challenged,
right?
And that will tie it up and prevent the effort to do it. And he probably fears that legal challenge will prevent any type of building of the wall. At least that's what he said.
Right.
Now, if he does want to build the wall, then the most appropriate way would be to get a deal with Congress rather than stretch it out.
Dr. Thomas Schwartz here from Vanderbilt. We are talking all things politics, and we have been spending most of our time, as you can imagine, talking about the government shutdown and President Trump's desire to build a wall at the southern border. We are going to continue to take your calls over here on News Channel 5 Plus. The number is 615-737+. We are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.